I've been making elderberry syrup for years. It's part of something our family believes in taking all winter long, especially if someone is under the weather, but also just as somewhat regular preventative. We're not always good at taking daily vitamins and such. So it's a when we remember thing that we make elderberry syrup. I'm also going to show you how to take your elderberry syrup. Children are working on schoolwork in the background, but I want to get this simmering and make it into gummies, which are easier to dose kids with versus giving them spoonfuls of sticky syrup. Super simple to make gummies, I promise. So I've always made elderberry syrup buying big bulk bags of elderberries, as well as we buy bulk buckets of honey. This is an investment. They are expensive to buy when you're buying them in bulk, but I mean, I've had this bag now for like a couple years. So one thing that a friend of mine does that I wanted to try out too, to show you, is she makes these little kits that you just dump this bag and add water and simmer, so you don't have to gather the elderberries and the different spices. If you're on the fence about trying elderberry syrup, you don't feel like buying in bulk or gathering a bunch of things, this is what, this is just a simple way to try it. I'll link it below so you can get one if you want. So this is what elderberries look like. They're just a little black dried berry. You might even be able to grow them where you live, which is pretty nifty. But you don't eat them fresh or raw because they can make you vomit. But once you simmer them, they become a delicious...
And have vitamins.
No, you can't eat them raw. Vitamin C rich food. So in there I see cinnamon sticks and star anise, and there's also cloves in here. I just can't see them. Oh, maybe they're just hidden in there. So now I'm gonna add 3 cups of water.
Oh,
Is there more you need to get out? Put them all in. You get all the last ones out there. And then here I'm making the large family batch of elderberry syrup. I've got 3 cups of dried elderberries, 6 cinnamon sticks, 2 tablespoons of cloves, 2 tablespoons of cardamom pods. I love the flavor cardamom gives in here. It's a good all warming spices, actually ginger too, that's the other thing I'm gonna add. So you can use a knob of fresh ginger, but I have dried ginger here. So I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of this. So when I make a massive batch of elderberry syrup, I don't add all the honey at once because that would be a lot of honey and that would feel kind of eek. But what I do, adding in water here, is I'll give my sister a couple jars, one for her fridge and one for her freezer, that she's got to add her own honey to it because otherwise she doesn't ever really get around to making it. And I'm already making a big batch, and her kids being healthy means my kids are healthier too. So I gift it to other people, but they have to add their own honey. You can also can it. Hamish, just a second. You can it without the honey, and then when you go to use it, you just gently warm up the juice. The spiced elderberry juice is what I label it as for canning, and add in your honey. So I'm going to show you all these options. You can also just freeze it in jars, but I usually never add the honey up front. Just so they've simmered now. They don't look much different. Well, they look a little plumper, I guess. And now they're going to sit to cool down for a bit. Both of them here.
Hey, Mom.
So I've got a strainer. If you have a wire mesh strainer, you don't need to line it, but I don't, so I line it with a thin tea towel cheesecloth over top of a pot to catch it. And then, from the chaos of my kitchen, all we're gonna do is pour it through there.
I know it's fancy.
So now I've got, Freya, leave it please. The small batch here in its pot and the big batch here, I've got 3 liters of juice. So with this one, you can can it. I will link some basic instructions. Basically, you're just following a water bath canning for juice. It's pretty simple. Pour it into hot jars, put on your soaked lids, process. Can't quite remember, 10 to 15 minutes, boiling water. I'll link it below for you, I'll find something with specific instructions. The other option is you can just put in wide mouth jar. So something with straight sides freezes well, so like this, or let's see what else we got in the cupboard. Don't use this. That's more likely to break off and freeze. Sorry, break off in the freezer if you're using it. And find straight-sided canning jars. Here's a quart jar that's pretty straight sides. I would use this one. Just make sure you leave lots of head space and you don't put it in the freezer warm. Make sure it's chilled, like put it in the fridge first and then put it in the freezer. I'm not sure what you're doing with those carrots there for you. Anyways, and then when you want to add it, so if you froze a pint jar or canned a pint jar of the spiced elderberry juice, you're then going to warm it up and add 1 cup of honey per 2 cups of the spiced juice. This way you can get the labor-intensive part, you know, the part where you have to do some pre-planning. Get all the spiced juice made, because if you're in charge of making elderberry syrup for your family's wellness, there's a good chance that when you get sick, if there's none made, no one's making it for you. So make sure you have some stashed in the freezer or canned, so that all you have to do is warm it up and add honey, or get someone else to warm it up and add honey. Okay? We're gonna do that with the small batch now. It's actually cold because we went out. So it's cold, so I'm gonna warm it up and add honey and make it into gummies for you. So here's the gelatin I buy, grass-fed, pasture-raised beef gelatin. It's about $30 for this 1 pound bag. This will last you a long time if you're only making gummies with it. It's in Rowan's formula as well. So my juice, there's a lovely scrambled egg pan in the back soaking there. But I've warmed this up and stirred in 3/4 cup of honey, and it's kind of like baby bottle warm. You don't want it hot, you don't want to kill that goodness of the honey, but it needs to be warm so that the gelatin dissolves. So I need 1/4 cup of gelatin. And then I need to put you down here for a second. So you're just gonna gently sprinkle it in and whisk so it doesn't clump. So we make sure it's well combined. It'll often be a little frothy. It's not very frothy today, actually. Normally it's a little frothy. And we are not gonna use any fancy molds here, guys. People use all sorts of fancy molds. Here's our Tupperware drawer. We're gonna get a container. We're gonna try this one. You could use a casserole dish. This is almost like a small casserole dish size. All we're gonna do is pour it in.
I love that garden.
So this would be like a 1.5 quart size, like dimensions. It's taller, but you want the gummies to be about, they're just over a finger tall. It's kind of a good one. And now here's a lid. And now we're just gonna tuck this in the fridge. So I ended up with 4 pints and 1, I think this is 750 mils for the freezer. And then this quart jar that I spilled and made a big mess is going to my sister's house for her to add honey and then do what she pleases with it. So it's 24 hours later. They do firm up quicker than that, but they are done and they are perfectly gummy jello. I cut it into 10 by 6, so it made 60. And then we toss them into a jar because this big container is kind of obnoxious for storing in. So we just break them apart. I just cut them up with a butter knife and put them in. Just one for you. And then this goes in the fridge.